everyone, welcome to another episode of Inside Cello. In this episode, I am going to be hosting my cello. It is going to be me and my cello. Hello dear. In this episode, I will try to give recommendations on how we can work on famous Arpeggione sonata, or maybe I should call it infamous, because it is extremely hard, at least for me, but I can still give recommendations on how to cope with the difficulties of Arpeggione sonata, and maybe we will conclude that it is not that hard if we know how to perform it. It is a great composition. It is really not as hard as challenging as it looks. As a student, the very first time I performed the scary part was the beginning, because there was a shifting, this famous almost all cellists I have met during the years I started to learn the piece are afraid that they are not going to be able to find the B natural with the third finger. This. So, with the bow I use, it is how it goes. The 3 8 notes, up bow. And then I do down bow. So the shifting between D natural and B natural here are on down bow, and in the end of the bow, when I think about it. The crucial part here is how much bow we use for each note. Longer, and we start shifting in the end of the down bow. And as soon as we do the up bow, it already has to be B natural. In this case, we start traveling to B natural in the end of the down bow. And each chromatic movement prior to that shift has to occupy longer bow. In the end, this is how it's supposed to sound. And then we keep going. From G sharp to E natural. I start shifting with my first finger, and then I stop shifting because we don't want to use big interval between the first and the third finger, and then I would say it is more logical to use from 3 to 4th finger, right? But I always tell my students, this is our first position on the time position. So we are used to playing C natural with our second finger, no matter what. It's like exactly on the first position. Also, we use the second finger for C natural. So as a result, I prefer to use and then here comes F natural. Guess what? Of course, my reference note is going to be B natural here. It's minor third from F natural. Why? Because again, we don't want to use big interval like this position because it's just tiring. It may be easy if you use it only once or twice, but until the end of the sonata. If you prefer that kind of fingering, you are going to be using your muscles on your hand. I don't know which muscles because I don't have the magical knowledge of that, but the feeling of this is really tiring. In the end, you got your hands really tired. So here we are. Of course, I don't want to hear the D natural. For that, I start shifting in the end of the bow, and I start travel towards the end of the bow, and when I start a new bow, it is going to be a new note, which is F. And here, before we come here, you need to take advantage of the offbeats. Where's and here, the fingering between the and are fourth and second, not this. Because I will start shifting with my second finger, but I will use G sharp on this string as a reference to be able to reach in natural on the A string, and I do all that shifting on the D string and on the offbeat. It is crucial. And of course my reference note is A, because the last part of the first thematic material in the cello part is actually, I think, the scariest shift ever on this sonata. So it goes like this. Because there's no reference or anything, so you have to be really aware and attack, and you have to start traveling towards B natural, which you are going to play with your thumb. And there are 8 notes. Considering that, you have really short amount of time until you shift. So you have to move your arm before you shift. It goes like this. And as I play the new bow, which in my case up bow, you already need to be here. Once you hit this point, actually it's not that hard, because you already find your position, the thumb position. You're going to play with your thumb finger on B natural. So it's really not that hard. There's a formula, and it is all hidden on the shifting, the timing, and everything. Let's keep going. Maybe here it might be hard, but again, I think timing of your left arm on shifting the positions, between the positions, is really important. You have to do it at the right time, which I believe is the offbeat. So how are you going to find the offbeat, off time of a 16 note? In this case, I would recommend your left arm always, left elbow always needs to be actively used. Never be stuck at one position. both playing and talking, giving the information. Those are the things in my mind all the time, but I'm not used to both playing and telling them. Anyways, here we go. This small part of piece of music has two parts inside of it, I believe. One is this. There you come. It's all on the fourth position most of the time, and it is crescendo. So in this case, you have to really save the bow. And here we go. When we do the down bow, we need to really play louder and faster with the bow, because you need to be at the tip of the bow to be able to play that second part of this thematic material. Now I'm at the tip, right? If with the right hand, with the bow, you don't move your elbow with a big enough gesture between the strings, like between the far areas of cellos, fingerboard. I wouldn't call it fingerboard, but the strings, you will not get enough articulation on your bow hands. So again, I couldn't play because again, I'm not used to both talking and performing Schubert Arpeggione. Again, I have to say, your left elbow needs to move really fast to the thumb position like this. Students got worried about the bow gesture. Two up bow, staccato in the same bow. So, how do we do it? If I am to teach it individually, heavier bow, and when I do this two staccato, I have to do it from the string. A semicircle to the left with my bow hand. Do, si, re, do, si, re, do. And my left elbow really active. With this 16-note passage, there are lots of movement on the left hand. We have to divide it in our mind. So this is the first division. Because we are all in the thumb position. Now, we divide it in our mind. This is how we start. And never miss that first note, which is G natural. Another division. Another division. Very, very important tricky part here is to use your first finger as you play with the third finger, as you play C natural, because you are going to shift with your first finger and never ever separate your left hand from cello's fingerboard at that point. Take like what, 3 seconds maybe as you perform it, and you know you teach your hands how to perform it, but you never teach yourself how to speak of it. So I'll do my best. And of course I forgot to say, you have to use bigger bow for each note. I know it sounds hard. For some reason, when I first learned it, my cello teacher used to tell me that all the time, but I was too scared to use a bigger bow for each note as I do the crescendo. But believe me, students, it is much easier to play with a bigger bow. I used to repeat those things to my students as well. By now, I'm sure they figure out it is easier to play this way. Here is another 16-note passage I want to talk about. So here we start here. There's a division. We are on the fourth position of the cello's fingerboard. It is pretty easy. Division. We are on the first position as thumb goes, because here is, I always tell my students, is the first position in terms of thumb positions. Division. And division. Divide from E natural and never miss this. From G natural. It has been a long time since I haven't thought about it actually. It was my master's degree, the first time I worked on Arpeggione. So trebling is actually, when you listen to it, is from G natural to, it's really not that far. Behind the scenes, let's call it behind the scenes. So my reference note is B natural with my third finger. Again, my third finger, D natural third finger here is on thumb position. It is on the first position of the thumb positions, because we always start learning thumb positions like this. I'm gonna play it without talking, which I'm used to. And then I need to find E flat. I don't find it because I use my first finger as a reference. Pizzicato, and never take it lightly. 19, this pizzicato is really important structural connection to the 16th note coming afterwards. As a student, I used to take those really lightly. I don't know why, because they are much easier than the other parts. But musically, they are really challenging. First of all, with my cello at least, it is hard to find the sweet sound, more desirable sound to hear, and you have to work on it. If you don't take it seriously enough, in a performance, you might make a mistake. I wonder if you realized during the performances, most of us make the mistakes from the very unexpected places, because those are the places we don't really practice, take seriously enough. And then we lose our concentration on stage, and it affects the other parts we work on much harder. And I play. And I take time here. That long note, it is very important to save the bow and never give up on the sound. And I never perform it harmonics. Another shifting with my left arm. It is now much easier to think of the offbeat because we have a long melodic line, long one sound on one down bow. So in this case, we wait until the end of the previous long note, and in the last 8th note, we start shifting, and the new bow is going to be a new note. To the left, 2 up bows, and start from the string. It's not like it is not that. And I use my left elbow really actively. Wait for the piano here, and then here. There's no shifting needed, no stress, because again we are on the first position of the thumb positions. Sorry about my mistakes again. I'm not used to talking at me. Anyways, here. And I use my elbow, left elbow, really actively. Always take a breath between the figures, because you have to, I think you need to, don't say it have to because it's not written or anything, but musically different kind of presentations are placed on this 2-3 bars in a row, and one comes with major, the other comes with minor tonalities. In this case, I think Schubert also gave us time to be able to locate our left hand. I take time and I start shifting with my first finger. Then I take time because it's mine. Sorry for my intonation. I will try to do my best. And use my elbow. I bait. And here comes the bow saving part. Listen to the piano. And I am not making that one. Here I use my second finger for the E natural. I think it's 3 beats. And then for the 16 note figures, I go back to the first position, which is actually not the first position, but first position of the thumb positions. This is what I call. So I could play it with my third finger too, but I think vibrato wise it is much more convenient to play it with the second finger, and I feel more comfortable with that. But I know lots of cellists prefer the third finger, which is also a good option, I believe. That's just my preference to use the second finger. Again, long bow, save the bow. You're alone here, almost alone, and again on the first position. Now we go on to the piano part, the second time you play the primary melodic line. Let's start from. Here I would recommend to turn the cello because we want to have more space on our right hand when we are on the C string. And then, of course, I relocate my cello. When I am on the A string here, I turn my cello towards me more because A string is the furthest string to us. So to be able to play more comfortable on the A string, I make the cello closer to me, so I turn it. I don't think there is one place the cello needs to stand as we perform. There are lots of locations like this as we play because all strings of the cello are on different levels. On the C string, we have to have space to be able to use our bow motion. Here, imagine my A string further from me. I can barely reach it. This is much easier. So here is, I think, a perfect example of how we should turn our cello to be able to play more comfortably on the different areas of cello's fingerboard. the right rhythms because I want to put an emphasis on when I move my left elbow, how I should move my left elbow. The more you use your left elbow as shifting between the notes in this thematic material, the comfortable you get, I believe. After all, you can only move your elbow so much anyways. You will never be able to move your elbow too much because shifting wise, it requires slow motions. So I should start from again, bow saving. Take your time. Here, I use the fingering because there is nowhere else to go afterwards. So I prefer to use the traditional third finger on E natural on the fourth position. And then after piano, stay on the tip. Then there's a connection. So how do we find that G sharp? The composer actually gives you time for that. On that time, you need to really move fast enough with your left elbow again. It's very important to use your left elbow effectively, fast enough on Schubert Arpeggione sonata to be able to find the right notes at the right time. Again, anyways, we need to really use the time given to us like this. And how do we find E natural from C sharp? I know it sounds a little bit different because we don't have C sharp in the music, and it really doesn't match the tonality here, but it matches the anatomy of our left hand. We don't want to use this position, it's so tiring. Here, I want to give one more hint. Never ever separate your left hand from the fingerboard, and first finger is the finger you use to do that. Here you go. Then I play. I never separate my first finger from the cello's fingerboard, and like this. Between A string and D string, I always relocate my elbow like this because there are very small motions actually, but they make a big difference on how comfortable you play. Here you go. not shift with your thumb. Shift with your first finger. And when you come back with the descending melodic line, use your second finger for shifting. And to be able to have the articulation on the right hand, you need to move your bow hand according to the string changes. Between the third string and second string and first string. And on the tip, it is really actually not a slow motion when I think about it. Again, there are divisions here. From this, how do I change shift on my left hand with my first finger again? Your first finger always need to be on cello's fingerboard. Division. So I divided those thematic, those motifs as a whole thematic material, but there are small parts played on the different positions of cello's fingerboard. Of course, you do not divide them as performing, you divide them as practicing in your mind to be able to relocate both of your hands according to the technical difficulties you have to solve as practicing. Help with another place. There is a division here. Never ever miss those three notes. It is the end. If you miss that, even if you did great before, it's all going to be lose its importance, I believe. So there is a reason. It's mental division, I would call it. Of course, you play it in a row, melodically, not separated, of course, but mentally, as you practice, you all focus on that last three notes. So those three notes in places like that are the climactic moments of that motifs. Again, famous bow motion of Arpeggione, let's call it that. So, down bow is heavier, up bow, two staccatos in one bow is supposed to be from the string, the first one, and semicircle to the left, and where you hit the string with the bow in the semicircle is the note. Because again, it is on the first position of the thumb position, and I still couldn't play it. And then you shift only a half note, to move your left elbow back to the third position, and that 16th note motif needs to be separated right here, and tell yourself never to miss it. At that point, another division. Another division. Here again, I couldn't play it because I was also talking. Your very important finger is your first finger. Never separate your first finger from cello's fingerboard, because you are going to use your first finger to be able to shift between the positions with the active use of left elbow also. So I use my first finger with F sharp, and still my first finger is on the string, I'm sorry. Again, another division here. That last 3/16 note, never ever miss it, because in the similar motifs, as I said before, if you miss those, the previous achievement's value is going to decrease a little bit, and you're going to feel really sorry as performing it. So how do I find G sharp from here? With B natural. Why? Because it is minor third, and we don't want to use major third with between our first and the third fingers, because anatomically it is really tiring. Again, I played it according to the divisions. Those divisions are defined by the position changes, shiftings, and each division also defines how and when I move my left elbow. I have to tell you, G sharp is the reference note, and all the shifting goes on the D string. And now I'm going to use my second finger on A. Wow, it worked. And F natural. Of course, I don't play them, but I use those notes as to reach my destination. My destination is E natural. And then piano plays. Shockingly, here I start shifting before the bow change. I had to play those last two notes. Thank you for listening. I hope I can become helpful for the students who are going to learn Arpeggione Sonata by Schubert. It's a great composition. I always enjoyed performing it. Most of the time I enjoyed practicing it. There were times quite painful actually as a cellist, as a young cellist. It is not as hard as it looks. As long as you think about the arrangements of your shifting and bowing, it is really not impossible. It is a great composition to enjoy. I think all cellists should learn it. If you learn Arpeggione and if you perform it, there are lots of other compositions you are going to enjoy performing and practicing. So don't think it as a piece only to be prepared for stage work. It is a composition that teaches you how to play the cello. This is my personal opinion, and this is the reason all of my students graduated from college actually had to learn Arpeggione. I never felt sorry for them. They did great, and I think they also liked the piece. Anyways, this is the end of another episode of Inside Cello. Thanks for watching. And again, I want to emphasize that the bowings and the fingerings are my personal opinion. I will always be open to any recommendation. If you want to give recommendations on that, of course, I will consider and I will try to work on them. Again, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.